Hi, everyone. I'm going to wait for people to come in. It takes a couple of minutes. I have much information to go over. Just waiting for people to come in. Yeah, there we go. Hey, Salah. Welcome. Yeah, it usually takes a couple of minutes for people to catch on to the live stream. And I want to wait till there's a few people in here. Hi, Isa. Salam alaikum. Nice to see you. Got a couple people from Gaza tuning in. All right. Looks like maybe not too many people are online, so I'm going to go ahead and begin. There's not very many people in this live stream, but that's okay. The information is important, and you know it usually ends up getting shared later. All right, so I will introduce myself. I am Ariyana Love, and I am with Occupy Palestine TV, reporting from Finland, also with the Liberty Beacon. So, sorry if there's noise here. There's a little bit of music. One of the bulbs in my house went out, and so I didn't have enough light to live stream from home. So I'm live streaming out of the house. All right, so there are a lot of things that have transpired over the past couple of days, and I'm going to try to go step by step through it. It's a lot of information I have been gathering from different sources. Good, there's a few people in here now. Great, welcome. So and it's very mind-blowing because what I see happening is that mainstream media is not reporting, of course, as we know. Yeah, I'm in a restaurant. Mainstream media is not reporting accurately on the the recent events in Gaza, the Israeli, basically violation of the ceasefire. To be very, very clear, in fact, I'm going to go back and put that in the captions of this video. Israel violated the ceasefire. As much as mainstream media loves to lie and try to blame Hamas and for rocket fire, Hamas retaliated to Israeli airstrikes. Okay, so here is what happened. And in fact, I haven't seen this reported in any mainstream media. Middle East Monitor reported on this today. The Liberty Beacon reported on this, and another independent news channel, which I can't remember at this time. But here's what happened. Okay, on Monday, Israeli special forces. A special forces unit infiltrated Gaza. Now, this is in itself a war crime. I just want to make that very clear. Anytime the occupiers enter into occupied Palestinian territory, which Gaza is, it is a war crime. So they entered into Gaza 3 kilometers. In Khan Yunis, in the eastern part of Gaza, and their mission was to abduct a top Hamas leader named Nawar Baraka. He was a high commander of the Al-Qassam brigades. And Al-Qassam, for anybody listening who doesn't know who they are part of the Palestinian resistance. There are several different factions. They all work in tandem with each other. So it is like a wing of Hamas. So these basically, the operation was to abduct him and bring him back across the Green Line into Israeli-occupied territory. All right, so a blue Volkswagen stopped in front of Nawar Baraka's house. His bodyguards became suspicious when they saw the vehicle, and they went out to investigate. The Israeli Zionist forces, they began to move away, but the bodyguards managed to stop them from leaving. Inside the vehicle were 4 Israelis 2 in the front seat and 2 in the back seat. The 2 in the back seat were wearing women's clothing. I guess they were in disguise. Or maybe that's just what they do. I don't know. That's their thing. When Noir and his bodyguards asked for IDs, the 2 Israelis in the back seat opened fire on them. They did assassinate Noir, and they injured his bodyguards. And then they drove off. So the incident was immediately reported to all Palestinian resistance units within the neighborhood, who began to follow the Israeli terrorists. Because, once they enter into Palestinian territory with the intent to harm, they are a terrorist, according to international law. So, Palestinian resistance followed the terrorists, and they killed one of them and injured another. Now, anytime that an Israeli is injured, killed, or captured, the Israeli occupation goes ballistic. And they began to, the Israeli warplanes began to attack the entire neighborhood of Khan Yunis to cover the retreat of their terrorists. And in those airstrikes, there were 6 Palestinian people killed, as well as 7 others who were wounded. Now, Khan Yunis, I don't know if people remember this, but it was carpet bombed in 2014 by the Israeli occupation. There is video footage released by the Israeli occupation, and in a period of 2 hours, 100 people were killed. They carpet bombed civilian homes and killed over 100 people and wounded almost 300 more. And the hospitals were flooded with casualties. These were horrific war crimes. I just wanted to throw that in there. Anyway, so Khan Yunis was under heavy fire on Monday night to try to cover for the retreat of their Israeli terrorists. The aerial bombardment, there was about 40 missiles dropped from warplanes as well as occupation drones for over 1 hour. And this was before a single Hamas rocket was fired at Israel. So, to be very clear, if the media is telling you, if any media is telling you that Israel retaliated to Hamas rockets, that is false. It's either a lie or it is just false information they're giving you. So definitely Hamas rockets were fired in retaliation against Israel and for their illegal incursion and operation, as well as their aerial bombardment for an hour. So this is the truth. The 6 people that were killed, Noureddin Salama, 37 years old, Mohammed Al-Kara, 23, Allah Qadir, 22, Mustafa Abu Odeh, 21, Mahmoud Musaba, 25, Noir Baraka, 37. So, of course, we know that the mainstream media is owned by 96% of the mainstream media. It was owned by 6 corporations, which were all Israeli dual nationals, founded by and led by Israeli dual nationals, by Israelis, Zionists, terrorists. But now it's probably down to 4 or 3 corporations. They keep consolidating their control. Okay. So, Israel was bombing Gaza since Monday evening, for Monday and Tuesday during the day. And during this, during their aerial bombardment, they destroyed 8 high-rise buildings, which were civilian infrastructure. This is incredibly tragic because Gaza has hardly anything. They're besieged. They can't leave. They have these few buildings which are usually funded by foreign governments, to give them a reprieve. For example, the Mashal Cultural Center was bombed like 2 or 3 months ago, and this was a place where it was founded by the Egyptians, built by the Egyptians, and many marriages were performed there, as well as there being, cultural activities to celebrate Palestinian culture. So, the Israelis like to target civilian infrastructure and wage collective punishment on the Palestinian people time and time again. And they take away their most precious, places, refuge, their places to go to feel like human beings, And to date, since the 2014 bombing of Gaza, only one house was rebuilt by the UN. So there has not really been, well, actually, I don't know, there was a pledge by, I can't remember, there was a Middle Eastern country that pledged money to rebuild, and I'm not sure if that ever happened. There's so much to keep track of. Sometimes I can't keep track of everything. Anyway, the civilian infrastructure that was bombed this time, there was a hotel, Al Amal Hotel, it was called. Al Amal, by the way, means hope, the hope. And this was sort of a landmark hotel in Gaza. It had been used for, I think, decades. Al-Aqsa TV headquarters. This is a media center. It was a high-rise building, and it was bombed. This is a tremendous war crime. You're not allowed to target the media, yet Israel does. Al-Rama building. I'm not sure what that building was, but it was another high-rise. There was another 5-story building that had a kindergarten and a restaurant. This was bombed and destroyed. There was a pharmacy that was destroyed. And then there was other residential homes destroyed. Yeah, hi Michael. Nice to see you. Yeah, I'm in a restaurant because a light bulb went out in my home and I didn't have another one to replace it, so I didn't have enough light in my house, so I came out to do this. But I think it's very important to get this information out because then, of course, the mainstream media is a sea of, part truths and part lies. And especially when it comes to Gaza, they're always going to blame the Palestinian people. Even in their titles, they're misleading. And they make it sound like Israel's retaliating to Hamas rocket fire. But it's exactly the opposite most of the time. In fact, probably all of the time. All right, so another civilian home that was destroyed, the Tahir family in Rafah, the Brahim family in Khan Yunis, the Naji family in Gaza City, and then there was another home in Al-Shajaya that was targeted and destroyed on Tuesday by first there was a drone warning that came in, so they do the tap on the roof. It's like they drop a smaller bomb in order to alert the residents that there's going to be a bigger bombing coming, and then they destroyed it. So, and then there was one Palestinian killed on Tuesday, Khalid Maruf. A motorcycle was targeted and 3 people were injured by an Israeli drone strike. So these are the things what Israel is doing. This is what the media will not tell you, because the media is, controlled by Zionist mainstream media. Just few media outlets will report on these things. So, on Tuesday, 4 international mediators brokered a ceasefire. They were Norway, UN, Egypt, and Qatar. Now, Hamas refused to accept the ceasefire unless the international community would guarantee that Israel would not violate the ceasefire this time, because they're sick and tired of these games. I mean, they should be. There were 160 airstrikes on Gaza. And we're talking huge. Some of the bombs, there was one bomb that didn't explode, and you could see it was a 2,500-pound bomb. All right, on civilians. This is what they did in 2014. And again, 8 high-rise buildings were destroyed, civilian infrastructure. These are war crimes. And I want to give a quote from a senior Israeli Air Force officer. This was reported in Middle East Monitor today. And he told Channel 20 TV, quote, "Our new deterrence strategy is targeting buildings in Gaza and destroying them completely," end quote. What he means is civilian infrastructure, as they did. Of course, it doesn't deter the Palestinian people. Nothing can deter the Palestinian people. I mean, they have been, protesting for the last 6 months, putting their lives on the line, paying for their freedom in their own blood. Nothing can deter them. So basically, all right, there's a few things I want to talk about. First of all, we established that Israel violated the ceasefire. The Israeli occupation looks really, really weak. The leadership looks very, very weak right now in front of the people. And this is a big problem for them. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Because they don't have the public opinion that they were counting on to be able to launch another full-scale military attack on Gaza. They failed with Al-Khan al-Amar. They ordered the demolition and forcible transfer, both are war crimes, of this Bedouin village in the occupied West Bank, which is next to occupied Jerusalem. Okay, Michael Bravo, he says he's not sure if it was 6 Hamas soldiers and 7 civilians were killed or just 7 people. I don't know. It's not clear. In fact, I get reports from Gaza news media, and it's not clear. And of course they're in a crisis, so they don't always give all of the details. It's been incredibly hard for the Palestinian people in Gaza. They were bombarded heavily on Monday and Tuesday. It was epic. Okay, Israel wanted to look good. The Israeli leaders wanted to look good. Okay, this incursion into Gaza, it was very unusual. All right. It didn't make any sense. I mean, the only thing I can think why they would do that is to try to look good in front of their society. Because again, because they are deceivers, they rely on public opinion. They live on public opinion. They began colluding with Facebook, Google, and YouTube to censor us. To censor our voices, we the people, the Palestinian people, any freedom fighters, any truthers, any independent media. At the end of 2017, it began, and then it officially began in January. But I was among one of the first to be censored. My second Facebook account had over 10,000 followers. I used that account for campaigning, and there was a lot of high-profile people on that account. There were and activists, and they removed it. Then they targeted Middle East Rising and removed my YouTube channel. It's a news channel. I'm reporting the truth. There was nothing on there that was copyright or strike or anything like that. I mean, they just took it down and wouldn't give it back. I was exposing Israeli occupation war crimes. Okay. But then in January, Facebook started targeting the Palestinian people, Palestinian activists, and removing their accounts. After that, they began targeting independent media. And there has been 900 independent media accounts removed by Facebook since January of this year. Media channels like Free Thought Project, like Policing the Police, Cop Watch, there's a list of others. And it would be interesting actually to share that with you guys, because I think that was not very circulated. So, even with all of this censorship, my point is that they were not able to censor us. I know that Anonymous has been working very hard of course, they are the hackers who created the internet. They know the internet, and they know how to get around the censorship. So basically, this big project to censor us has failed. It's failed completely. And I have to give most of the credit to the Palestinian people, because they're the ones going out there on the front lines, putting their lives on the line for the international community to see them in Gaza in the Great Return March protests. And, you can't hide that. No matter how much the media lies, you can't hide that. When the Israeli occupation forces sit there and execute children, medics, journalists, they target children, give them kill shots to the head and chest. I mean, they've done horrific crimes. Weapons testing, nerve agents. According to the Ministry of Health in Gaza, around 800 people, well, their report is that 800 people were affected with chemical weapons, with some kind of nerve agent, some gas bombs that they were disseminating from the Israeli drones. Of course, these are internationally banned weapons. These are, experimental. It's mind-boggling to me that governments have not sent a delegation to Gaza to investigate. Yet they will send a delegation to Douma, Syria, when that is a clear and evident false flag. I mean, there was, information that surfaced within days of this false chemical attack, that it was staged by the White Helmets. Yet they still spend the money to send a delegation over there to investigate. Yet they completely ignore the Palestinian people in Gaza. Mind-boggling. There's so much ignorance. Anyway. And the main reason I think for that is the shadow banning. Shadow banning is part of it. The media censorship. This is the main reason. I mean, the Zionists, the global Zionist, this Jewish mafia or Zionist cabal, that's global. They have literally bought up all major news channels and consolidated them so that they can control what we get to see and hear. And we get to see that as an example of this, this Israel violating the ceasefire. Yet we hear the opposite in the media. One delegation was turned away. Yeah, that's true. I know. I reported on that and published on it. The delegation that was sent to Gaza. It was what was it? It was the chemical weapons inspectors from the UK. I forget what their initials are, CP something or something. I don't know if somebody knows, they can type it in. But yeah, they were stopped. They were prevented from getting in. And, because they said it wasn't safe. Yet 2 journalists got in to Douma and interviewed the entire community. One was a world-renowned journalist. He, and everybody knew there was no chemical weapons attack. It was a false flag that a couple of White Helmets came in, and started screaming chemical weapons, and then they were filming and they started hosing people off. And I mean, I looked at the footage, and within seconds, I knew that I was like, that's not a chemical weapons attack. The coloration, just the coloration on the face of people, it wasn't right. If there's chlorine gas or sarin or anything else, you're going to have a blue coloration. There was none of that. They just wet people. No one was suffocating. So anyway, it was very clear that this was a false flag. And then within days, the entire medical staff from the hospital in Douma testified. There was like a dozen people, doctors, nurses, medics, ambulance drivers, who all testified and said that it was told what happened, that it was the White Helmets, that the whole thing was staged. Yet we had governments sending delegations to Douma to investigate. You see, this is how diversion works. This is how the Israeli occupation and the U.S. government and stuff, which is now completely controlled by Israel and Zionists, this is how they divert our attention. So they're using the real chemical weapons on the Palestinian people in Gaza during the protests, the demonstrations, but they want our attention in somewhere else. So, this is it's a good example of how they operate. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Michael Bravo just brought up a very important point. So after the ceasefire was negotiated, now I pretty much knew and would have bet my life on it that there would not be a full-scale military assault on Gaza, because they don't have the public opinion for that. And well, I want to say this. So basically, after the defeat of Al-Khan al-Ahmar, they looked foolish in front of their people. They looked like weak. And so they want to try to make themselves look stronger. But after they killed 3 children, those kids that were between the ages of 12, 13, and 14, I think, or between 11 and 13, they were in Gaza. They were killed by a drone strike. That was it. That was Ireland, the Irish government called for sanctions on Israel and an arms embargo. So, the international community is turning against Israel. And even they've done everything in their power to censor us. The international community is totally fed up. And this is because of the protests, because of the Great Return March demonstrations, and because of the sacrifice of the Palestinian people, putting their lives on the line like that. You can't deny it. Everyone sees. Even when the media lies, you can't deny it. So, after the ceasefire was brokered, Jewish extremists in, Israeli occupied Jerusalem, they were protesting against the truce. They don't want a truce. Also, Qatar gave fuel to Gaza. For the first time in years, Gaza had 2 days straight of electricity. And at first, Israeli occupation tried to stop the fuel from getting into Gaza. This is fuel to run the electric, to give power and electricity to the Palestinians in Gaza. So the Israeli occupation could not succeed in stopping the delivery of this fuel, the import of this fuel. So then the Israeli settlers from the nearby illegal settlements started coming and standing in front of vehicles and stopping the vehicles from getting into Gaza. Because they want the Palestinian people to starve to death. This is their mindset. These are, the settlers are 650 or is it more? I think it's 650,000 illegal settlers living in the occupied West Bank. And they're all committing crimes. They're all violating international law. They're all criminals. The adults are all criminals. They're knowingly committing a crime. But their mindset is so extremist. Most of them. Because you can't generalize and say all, but most of them. So, this is what they do. This is what the occupation society does. Yes, I'll talk about Lieberman in a minute, too. So, basically, Israel is falling apart. This is the good news. Israel is falling apart. The occupation is falling apart. Their leadership is in complete chaos right now. They called for a full-scale military assault on Gaza, over 2 weeks ago. Okay, they failed with Al-Khan al-Ahmar, and then they turned their attention to Gaza. They want the protests to stop. They warned Hamas to make the Palestinian people stop the demonstrations. They said if they didn't stop, that within 1 week, they gave them 1 week. 1 week, they said they will launch a full-scale military assault on Gaza. Now, the problem with that is that they didn't have public opinion. So, after that announcement, within that 1 week period of time is when they assassinated those 3 children, and Ireland responded with a call for sanctions. This is unprecedented for a government to do that. This is what we need all governments to do now. We need to finish them. We need to strike them when they are weak. And Israel is very weak right now. After this incursion, this special forces operation in Gaza, which completely failed, by the way, I think that they wanted to bring this, Nawar Baraka, this commander, this Al-Qassam commander, they wanted to bring them back to the Israeli occupied territories and to look like heroes in front of their people. But it failed. And it's because they needed something like that, because they're looking very weak. And there's elections coming up. Netanyahu wants to win those. Netanyahu did not want to carry out a military strike on Gaza. Yet the defense minister, Lieberman, what's his full name? Abagor Lieberman? Anyway, his last name is Lieberman. He did. And so there was a conflict between them. Now, this is very interesting. After this failed mission, Lieberman just stepped down. In fact, there's a couple of Israeli leaders who just stepped down. So was there a secret assignment that took place that failed? You know? But Israel, the Israeli occupation is in chaos right now. Okay. Against Netanyahu, appeal to the fire. Okay, so Michael Bravo says Lieberman quit so that he can run against Netanyahu and appeal to the far right. Yeah, probably. I was wondering about that. That could be. Yeah. So Majid Salem says Israel's next election is in January. And if Netanyahu wants to win, he will start a bad and very strong war in Gaza to ensure that the Israeli people will vote for him. Yeah, of course, that will increase his popularity, but I think that he would not do that until after winning the elections. I think he's not going to do anything to jeopardize his election. Yeah, so, well, Michael just said Mossad people are in Gaza, but no, sorry for that. If anybody is watching, don't send me messages right now because I'm live streaming. No, Mossad has never been able to infiltrate Hamas. This is the thing that really pisses them off. Another thing that pisses them off. And this incursion, it was, they were not people inside Gaza. They crossed over the apartheid, fence and came in a vehicle. Looking at my notes here. Yeah, I think I covered all my notes anyway. I hope I'm not forgetting. Yes, there was an Al Jazeera an Al Jazeera article that was released today. Really important, and it's about the Israeli archives, the archaeological findings. They've been collecting and hiding Palestine's archaeological history from the public and changing the history, literally. And they were doing this since way before the Israeli occupation began. So they started this in 1930, which proves this ill intent to, ethnically cleanse the Palestinian people from their land. This is an extremely important article. Yeah. So yeah, the Israeli occupation, they're sheer terrorists. They have just proven they are capable of anything. I mean, they proved that long ago in 2014. But nobody wants to see another military assault. A full-scale military assault on Gaza right now would mean money in the pockets for a lot of people, the Zionists. It would mean a boost to the Israeli arms industry and the U.S. arms industry. They would then be able to sell their weapons for a multitude more of the price than they're worth, like untested weapons. And tested weapons are worth, I think it's like something like 12 times more. It might even be a lot more than that, than untested weapons. So this is why they like to do these big military assaults. But a smaller military assault like this, a day or two of bombing, it's very costly for the Israeli occupation. Because of course they're not able to test their weapons. So it's not, they're not going to be able to continue to do stuff like that. Like, they're really hurting right now. And they're really weak right now. I'm a little bit distracted, this music. It's not my thing. So is there anything else that I'm missing? Can anybody think of anything else that I'm missing here? So, okay, yes, the California fires. This is very important. Because this is also not being covered much. I mean, it's being covered by the mainstream media, but they're not explaining exactly what it's about. These fires, now I've investigated the California fires since the beginning. The first fires began after the Las Vegas terror attack. And I think that the Las Vegas, shooting was to divert our attention. Again, the Zionist mafia, Jewish mafia. Now, when I say Jewish mafia, I just want to make one thing clear. I'm not talking about all the Jewish people. I'm talking about the mafia that controls our planet, that enslaves humanity, okay? It is a Talmudic ideology. It is not, it's not Muslims doing it. It's not Christians doing it, not Buddhists. It's not frickin' Sri Lankans, okay? They are Jewish mafia. It is a Jewish mafia occupying the planet, controlling the financial banking system, controlling our governments, controlling the media. So we need to understand that, because they are the masters of diversion. They will carry out a terror attack and turn around and blame somebody else, like the Muslims. Okay. So I'm not blaming all people, just like you would not say that, you would not blame all Italians for the Italian mafia, right? Not all Italians are part of the Italian mafia. Same with the Jews. Not all Jews are part of the Jewish mafia. But it is a Jewish mafia committing these atrocities against humanity. Okay? So I just want to make that clear. I'm definitely not an anti-Semite. I'm not a Jew hater. We need the Jews too. We need everyone in this fight. We need all the freedom fighters. So, and of course the Palestinian people, they are the ones who set this, example for the rest of us. When I lived in Palestine, they told me, I was surprised. I was so surprised. I was there for 1 year, and in the occupied Palestinian territories in the West Bank. And after like 3 months, I was like, nobody has said anything negative about the Israelis or about Jews, or I was just shocked by that. How could this be? And so I started to ask questions. Why do you guys never criticize or show anger towards your occupiers? And they said to me, everyone said the same thing. Well, Islam, the Quran, it tells us that Jews are our brothers and sisters. Jews and Christians are our brothers and sisters. And it's not the Jews that we have a problem with, it's Zionists, Zionist Jews. This is the problem. Of course, Zionism was created by Jews. Again, the Jewish mafia. Okay? And not all Jews subscribe to Zionism. Many Jews are against it. In fact, the Palestinian Jews that were living there for the past, at least 2,000 years, the Sephardi Jews are completely against Israel and the occupation in Zionism, everything it stands for. And they protest it all the time. So, just to make that clear, because it can be confusing. So, I think that the Great Return marches have been very successful. There is talk in Gaza now about this being a big success. Basically, to the Palestinian people, Israel was defeated. Their plans to carry out a full-scale military assault on Gaza were thwarted, and it was prevented by the Palestinian people. Palestinian people need to feel very proud about that. They did, an incredible thing these last 6 months, and just trying to put my thoughts together. So the protests basically thwarted this evil plan by Israel, by the Israeli occupation. That's important to understand. And it also helped all of us to go around the censorship, because you just can't deny when you see, a child being executed. You just can't deny that that's wrong. What else? So, of course, that the Zionists, they're going to devise something. They're going to come up with something. They always do. They're just very treacherous that way. So we can expect, more and more and more assaults, of course. But the public opinion is with Palestine, and more and more people are waking up, especially in the United States. And when Trump moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, to occupy Jerusalem, and made a move on Jerusalem like that, the Americans started really paying attention to Palestine. Like, what? Why? Why are we doing this? And, you know, and also the Great Return March demonstrations. It has woken up a lot of people. And so I see the tide turning against Israel. And I really, truly do believe that if they launched a full-scale military assault on Gaza, it would end in sanctions. They would be finished this time. Finished. I'm sure that there's governments that have already drafted, paperwork, and they're just waiting. So, and I think they know that. They know that well. If they're smart, they're gonna realize it. So they'll come up with something. They'll devise something anyway. So I think I covered everything, and I can go ahead and end this live stream. Is there any questions anybody has, or any information that I may have missed or something? Looking at the note at people's comments. Yeah, it's so upsetting to, read headlines that, lie, that demonize the Palestinian people, that lie. Oh, something else. Probably a lot of you have seen this footage of an Israeli military bus being blown up by the Palestinian resistance, from Gaza. Well, this is very interesting. Because the report about that is that, okay, so the Palestinian resistance waited for all the Israeli, the IDF, the militants, Israeli militants, to unload from the bus first before targeting the bus and exploding it. They could have killed dozens of Israeli militants inside that bus, but they purposefully chose not to. And I find that very interesting. I'm not inside their heads. I can't say exactly their reasons for that, but that says a lot about the Palestinian people, which they do not ever get credit for stuff like this. But I remember watching stuff like this in 2014, watching the behavior of the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. And they would literally give 2 hours warning before they would launch rockets at an illegal settlement. They would give the Israeli occupation ample warning to warn any civilians. Maybe to let the parents get their children to safety. Okay, because children are innocent. I don't like the settlers because they're all committing crimes, knowingly. Once they turn adult and they are living in occupied Palestinian territory, they're a criminal. They should all be restrained by their necks. Their children removed. Absolutely. But I just find these things very interesting because you never hear about that in the media. But there are many heroes. There are many Palestinian heroes, and this is just another example of that, how the Palestinian people are really heroes. They could have killed all those, however many dozens of Israeli militants that were in that bus. They chose not to. So, also, the firing power of the Palestinian resistance has increased. They're able to destroy buildings now. And so this changes the game a lot. The Israelis are not used to losing any of their own people, or having, their infrastructure destroyed. And now the Palestinian resistance has the capability of doing that. And I think they have the capability of doing a lot more. So, I mean, this has really put Israel into a shock. It shocked them. The last 6 months in the Great Return March protest and the tenacity of the Palestinian people to keep going out there and sacrificing their lives has not only thwarted a military attack by Israel, by the Israeli occupation, but it has put the Israeli leadership into chaos. They're divided. Some want this, some want that. and they can't agree with each other. Reading a comment. So now, the things are changing. The tide is turning against Israel, and this is exactly what's needed. And I really hope that governments prepare for sanctions against Israel. It's time. They're weakened, and it's time we strike them. And, to prevent any more. Also, Palestine needs an international protection force. Palestinians do. They deserve it. Absolutely. Erdogan from Turkish leader, some months ago at the beginning of the Great Return March protest, he gathered a bunch of leaders from the Middle East together to sign an agreement that calling for an international protection force for Palestinians. Now, of course, that's never going to happen unless Western governments get involved in such a thing. But that was a powerful, powerful, unprecedented move. And we can run with that. We the people, I really want to stress that we the people have a tremendous amount of power to influence governments, our politicians, human rights organizations, to get them to act. Israel cannot survive without public opinion, and they have failed to censor us. So their days are numbered. They really are. I think they have very few days remaining. People are awakened, especially Americans. So everything that they do, every wicked plan they devise, it backfires. And sooner or later, they're either going to realize it or they're not, but they're going to finish themselves. They're destroying themselves. They do it better than anybody. So, yeah, it's a matter of time. All right, I think I've said everything that I wanted to say. I'm going to go ahead and say goodnight now. Please share. I know this information, it didn't really get circulated. Mainstream media, of course, won't touch it. But I can say that Middle East Monitor did report on this. They reported on the Israeli Special Forces incursion into Gaza. They do fair reporting. The Liberty Beacon did. Occupy Palestine TV. So this is Ariyana Love reporting with Occupy Palestine TV and the Liberty Beacon. Take care, everybody. Free Palestine.